Hello students and welcome to the lecture. So students, basically in this lecture, we are going to start a new topic which is a Comptroller and the Auditor General of India. Okay. So we are going to start this particular topic and let's see what are the contents we have added here for the discussion. Like we are going to discuss about the introduction to the post Comptroller and Auditor General of India. Thereafter the appointment and terms. Thereafter the independence nature. Thereafter the duties and the powers performed by them. Thereafter, what is the role? Thereafter, CAG and the corporations. Thereafter, the Appleby's criticism. Okay. So these are the topics which we are going to discuss about it, and this is going to be a very important thing for the competitive exam. Why? Because it is regarding the financial sphere of the Indian polity, or we could also call it as a political structure. All right. So let's begin with the introduction. So the Constitution of India basically provides a Article 148 provides for an independent office of the Comptroller and the Auditor General of India, which is in short we call it as a CAG. So what we could conclude it here that basically it is a constitutional body. Why? Because it has been mentioned in the Constitution. Okay, and remember the Article 148, and it is an independent office of the Comptroller and Auditor General of India. What does it mean? Independent office. So basically, whenever we talk about the constitutional bodies, so there are higher chances that they will be under some ministry or the department or the authority of the government of India. But when we talk about the in office of Comptroller and Auditor General of India, then basically it does not come under any ministry or department. Does not come under any ministry or department. Hence, it works independently. That's why we call it as an independence office of the Comptroller and the Auditor General of India. All right. He is the head of the Indian Audit and Accounts Department. Okay. So here we have draw a question here. Like if the question asks in the examination, like which post heads the Indian Audit and Accounts Department? Your options are A, B, C, D. First is the Prime Minister. Okay. Thereafter, Governor of Reserve Bank of India. Okay. Thereafter, the Union Finance Minister. And third is the Comptroller and Auditor General of India. Okay. So basically, if we look at these options, so the first thing which we will do that we will mark the option as a Union Finance Minister. Okay. Because we know that the audit and accounts is the part of financial field. Part of financial field. All right. And the financial field is under the Ministry of Finance, which is headed by the Union Finance Minister. Okay. But if we have make sure that our concepts are clear, then basically instead of marking the Union Finance Minister, what we will do that we will mark the Comptroller and the Auditor General of India. Comptroller and the Auditor General of India, we will mark this option. All right. So remember that he is the head of the Indian Audit and the Accounts Department. He is guardian of the public purse and control the entire financial system of the country at both the levels of center and the state. Okay, why he is said that he is a guardian of the public purse? Why? Because he watch after all the expenditures and revenues of the government. Okay, from the center and the state level. And we know that basically the government revenues from the sources which are the people of India, who is working for some cause, who is paying taxes for some cause and all. So that's why he is oftenly regarding as a guardian of the public purse, that who is looking after the government expenditures and revenues, so that it could be ensured that the public, you can say the public efforts in the financial fields must be utilized in the proper area. He is, or you can say his duty is to uphold the Constitution of India and the laws of Parliament in the field of the financial administration. The reason why dear B.R. Ambedkar said that the CAG shall be the most important officer in the Constitution of India. Why? Because he is controlling the financial administration of the country. Okay, and we know that without having a great, or you can say even the good financial administration, the country could not sustain for a long. So that's why he said that he is a topmost officer as per the Constitution of India. He is one of the bulwarks, or bulwarks you can say, the defenders of the democratic system of the government in India. The others being the Supreme Court, the Election Commission, and the Union Public Service Commission. All right. So remember this thing about the CAG. The CAG is appointed by whom? He is appointed by the President of India by a warrant under his hand and seal. Okay. So remember that President of India is the appointer of the CAG. The CAG, before taking over his office, makes and subscribes before the President on oath or the affirmation. Like uh, before joining the office or before accepting the post as a Comptroller and the Auditor General of India. All right. The person who has been selected by the President for the post is required to take an oath or the affirmation before the President that he will do his work with fair and efficiency matters. But before go to the things, let me ask you that why we are calling him as a comptroller. What is the significance behind calling him as a comptroller? So if any one of you is from the financial field, then he or she could easily understand it. But those who belong to non-financial fields, let me tell you that comptroller is the financial alternative of controller. Okay. So basically you could say that we call controller as the comptroller in the finance language, and the CAC is in the financial field. That's why he is also called as a comptroller or the controller of the financial area. Got it? So that is the thing. So basically, what is the oath and affirmation he takes before the President of India? First is to bear true truth and allegiance to the Constitution of India. Okay. Second, to uphold the sovereignty and the integrity of India. To duly and faithfully and to the best of his ability, knowledge, and judgment, perform the duties of his office without fear or favor, affection, or ill or will. It means that whatsoever is the ruling party, because the ruling party having the access to use the funds from the sources. Okay, whatsoever is the ruling party at the central level as well as the state level, he will not favor them, he will not affect it to them, he will not going to willing to support them, and he will do his thing or do his duty as per the best of his ability, knowledge, and the judgment. Okay, it means that he must be fair enough in his approach to examine the expenditures and the revenue parts of the central and the state level, and he must be uphold the constitution and the laws of India. All right, so that he could be appointed as an CAC and he could be discharged with the responsibility to look after the public purse and secure the gateways of it. he holds office for a period of 6 years or up to the age of 65 years, which is earlier. It means that constitution defined fixed term or fixed age for the post of CAG. Constitution defined fixed term or fixed age for the CAG. Like once he got appointed, he could hold the office up to for 6 years, all right, or up to the age of 65 years maximum. Okay, whichever is earlier. Suppose if he got selected in the year of 2011, so he must serve till the 2070 as per the norms of 6 years. But in 2011, he was 62 years old, for example. So he must be retired at the age of 2014 when he crossed the age of 65 years. Got it? So basically, you could say that the term is totally fixed. Like if he is not attaining the age of 65 years, then he will serve the entire 6 years. But in between of these 6 years, if he attain the age of 65 years, then he must be retired from the post. Thereafter, he can resign anytime from his office by addressing the resignation letter to the President of India. Okay, like if he is not willing to continue for the 6 year, then he is not required to do it. He could resign at any time, but his submission will be taken over by the President of India only. He can also be removed by the President on the grounds and in the same manner as the judge of the Supreme Court. It means that apart from the retirement, okay, or the completion of term or the resignation, he could also be removed by the President on the same grounds as the judge of the Supreme Court. In other words, he can be removed by the President on the basis of a resolution passed to that effect by the both of houses of parliament with special majority, either in ground of proved misbehavior on the incapacity. Okay, so basically you could say that if the parliament passed the resolution for the impeachment of the comptroller and the auditor general of India, all right, and this should be passed by both houses, means Raj Sabha and the Lok Sabha, with the special majority, which stands for 2 by 3rd sitting capacity and at least more than 50% of the members must be in favor of the resolution. So if the resolution is passed to remove, then the president could easily remove the comptroller and the auditor general of India from his office before completion of the term or attaining the retirement age. All right. Thereafter, after finishing the appointment and terms, now we have to discuss about the independence of the comptroller and the auditor general of India. Okay, like in the very beginning, we had discussed that basically the comptroller and the auditor general of India is an independent office. Okay, so it means that he is independence. So what are the provisions provided in the Constitution of India that makes him independent and his office as an independent of ministries, organizations, or the government departments? So the Constitution has made the following provisions to safeguard and ensure the independence of the CAG. So the first provision we could see here is he is provided with the security of tenure. Okay, he can be removed by the president only in accordance with the procedure mentioned in the Constitution. Thus, he does not hold his office till the pleasure of the president, though he is appointed by him. So basically, if the person has been appointed as in CAG, all right, then he could leave the office only after 6 years or after attaining the age of 65 years. Prior to this, he could be only removed by two process, through resignation or impeachment. All right. So you could say that, however, the President of India appoints the CAG to the office, but he could not remove him. Okay, until or unless the thing of 6 years and 65 years fulfilled, or the person submitted the resignation or the impeachment process. Okay, if this is not happening, the person could not be removed from the office, so that makes the security of tenure, and the person who has been appointed as a CAG could discharge his duties effectively and efficiently. Thereafter, he is not eligible for further office either under the Government of India or any state after he ceases to hold his office. It means that once the person removed from the CAG office or removed as a CAG, then he could not be appointed on any post under any office of the Government of India at the central level or any of the state at the state level, so that he could not favor or affected towards any party, so that he could get the employment after the retirement. Thereafter, his salary and other service conditions are determined by the parliament. His salary is equal to that of a judge of the Supreme Court. So the parliament is the body which decided salary. It means the ruling party could not curtail the salary by its alone. Alright. And the salary is equal to the Supreme Court judge. Alright. Thereafter, neither his salary nor his right in respect of leave of absence, pension, or age of retirement can be altered to his disadvantage after his appointment. It means that all the things like leave of absence, pension, age of retirement, these all the things will be determined before appointment, or you can say pre-appointment. Okay, so whatsoever the things will be defined in these matters once the person is got appointed as an Comptroller and Auditor General of India. These things could not be changed after the appointment. Okay, remember this thing. All right. The condition of service of person serving in Indian Audit and Accounts Department and the administrative powers of the CAG are prescribed by the President after the consultation with the Comptroller and Auditor General of India. Okay, so basically the Comptroller and Auditor General of India also advises the President that what must be the powers should be granted to him and what must be the service conditions for the persons who are working for the Indian Audit and the Account Departments. Okay, the administrative expenses of the office of CAG, including all the salaries, allowances, and pensions of the persons serving in that office, are charged upon the Consolidated Fund of India. Okay, thus they are not subject to the vote of Parliament. So what does it mean? It means that whenever the budget is presented in the Parliament, so all the expenditure of the government are mentioned here, like which department is getting which much of you can say the budget and the expenditure. So basically the departments which expenditures are charged on the Consolidated Fund of India, these expenditures could not be challenged for the voting of Parliament. All right, so basically that's provide the security in salaries, allowances, and pensions to that persons who is serving for the office of CAG, so that they could do their work freely and do not have to bother about the changing service conditions. Further, no minister can represent the CAG in Parliament, both houses, and no minister can be called upon to take any responsibility for any actions done by him. Alright, it means that CAG will be the non-member of Parliament. Or generally the outsider from the Parliament, so that he could ensure the you can say the integrity and the fairness. If he will be the member of Parliament, so there are chances that whether he is from the ruling party or from the opposition, so if such a case prevailed, then there are chances that he must be corrupt. Thereafter, what are the duties and powers assigned to him? So basically the Constitution, by the power of Article 149, authorize the Parliament to prescribe the duties and powers of the CAG in relation to the accounts of the Union, central level, and of the state level, and any other authority or body. Accordingly, the Parliament enacted the CAC's Duties, Powers and Conditions of Service Act 1971. Alright, it means that the parliament having the power to define the duties and the powers of the CAC in relation to the accounts of union and of the states. Remember, the service conditions fixed by the President of India, but other powers regarding the accounts of the union and the states and any other authority or body, these all powers are decided by the parliament. Okay, so accordingly the parliament has prescribed the Duties, Powers and Conditions of Service Act 1971. This act was amended in 1976 to separate accounts from audit in the central government. So the act was passed in the 1971 and amended in 1976. So the accounts from audit in the central government could be separated. All right. Thereafter, the duties and functions of the CAC as laid down by the Parliament and the Constitution are: first, he audits the accounts related to all expenditure from the Consolidated Fund of India. The Consolidated Fund of each state and Consolidated Fund of each union territory having a legislative assembly. Okay, so basically he having the power that whatever the UT which having the legislative assembly, those Consolidated Fund of India he could audit. State government's Consolidated Fund of India, sorry, state government's Consolidated Fund they could audit, and even the Consolidated Fund of India he could audit. And the UTs which do not having the legislative assembly, these are the part of central government. So when the CAG audits the Consolidated Fund of India or the central government expenditure, then automatically the UTs without legislative assemblies are being audited. Thereafter, he audits all expenditure from the Contingency Fund of India, okay, and the Public Account of India, as well as the Contingency Fund of each state and Public Account of each state. Audit all trading, manufacturing, profit and loss accounts, balance sheets, and other subsidiary accounts kept by any department of the central government and the state government. So these are the auditing powers which have been rested with the Comptroller and the Auditor General of India. All right. Thereafter, he audits the received and the expenditure of the center and each state to satisfy himself that the rules and procedure in that behalf are designed to secure an effective check on the assessment, collection and proper allocation of the revenue. Okay. Audits the received and the expenditure of following, like these are the bodies of which he could easily audit the receipt and the expenditure. First body is all bodies and authorities substantially financed from the central or the state revenues. So the bodies which are basically functioning on the revenues of the central and the states, they could be audited. Thereafter, the government companies which we oftenly call as a PSU, public sector units. And third is other corporations bodies whence required by the related laws. Okay, and here generally the private bodies in the third option, generally the private bodies which having relation with government by agreement or memorandum. So if there is any private body which having a close relation with the government or the government bodies through the agreement or memorandum, then this file could also be audited by the CAG as per the related laws. All right. Thereafter, he audits all the transactions of the central and the state governments which are related to the debt, sinking funds, deposits, advances, suspense accounts, and remittance business. Okay. Also audits the receipts, stock accounts, and others with approval of the president or when required by the president. Okay. So basically, he could directly audit the transaction of the central state government when it's a matter of debt, sinking funds, deposit, advances, suspense account, and the remittance business. And if the president approve and if the president requires, then he could audit the receipt, stock accounts, and other files. He audits the account of any other authority when requested by the president or governor. For example, the audit of local bodies could be done when the governor or the president requested and approved. Why? Because generally the CAG or the Comptroller and Auditor General of India is required to audit the account of central government and the state governments. He advises the president with regard to the prescription of the form in which the accounts of central and the state government shall be kept under Article 150 so that he could exercise the auditing powers effectively. He submit his audit reports relating to the accounts of the center to the president, who shall in turn place them before both the House of Parliament by the Article 151 for the discussion. All right. So if the question asked in the examination, like to whom the CAG submits his report, so remember the answer will be President of India. He submit his audit reports relating to the accounts of the state to the state governor, who shall in turn place them before the state legislature by Article 151. So when the reports are about the central government, then that will be placed before the president. And if it is regarding the state government, then the governor will take the checkup. All right. He ascertains and satisfies the net proceeds of any tax or duty by Article 279. His certificate is final. The net proceed means the proceed of tax or duties minus the cost of collection. Okay. Like you could say, suppose if the collection is 20,000 crores, for example. All right. And the expenditure is, which was occurred in the collection of this rupees, is 2000 crores. Then what will be the net collection? Net collection is only 18,000 crores. Why? Because 2000 crores have been spent out or expended for the collection of the revenue. So basically, his duty is to find out the net collection, not the total collection. Okay. He acts as a guide, friend, and philosopher of the Public Accounts Committee of the Parliament, which is generally appointed to look after the revenue and the expenditure. Compiles and maintains the account of state government. In 1976, he was relieved of responsibilities with regard to the compilation and maintenance of accounts of the central government due to the separation of accounts from the audit. That is departmentalization of the accounts. All right. Thereafter, the CAG submits the three reports to the president: audit report on the appropriation accounts, on finance accounts, on public undertakings. All right. First is the appropriation account, second is the finance account, third is the public undertakings. The president lays these reports before the houses of the parliament. Okay, then the houses will discuss. After this, the public account committee examines them and reports its findings to the parliament like what they have examined. The appropriation accounts compare the actual expenditure with the expenditure sanctioned by the parliament through the appropriation act, while the finance account shows the annual receipt and disbursement of the union government. All right. Thereafter, what is the role? The role of CAG is to uphold the Constitution of India and the laws of parliament in the field of financial administration. The accountability of the executive, therefore the council of ministers who will, you can say, carried out the operations in the name of government to the parliament in the sphere of financial administration is secured through the audit reports of the CAG. All right. The CAG is an agent of the parliament and conducts audit of expenditure on behalf of the parliament so that the parliament could know that what is the performance of the government in the financial terms. Therefore, he is responsible only to the parliament. The CAG has more freedom with regard to audit of expenditure than regard to the audit of receipts, stores and the stocks. Whereas in relation to the expenditure, he decides the scope of audits and frames his own audit codes and manual. He has to proceed with the approval of the executive government in relation to the rules for the conduct of the other audits. The CAG has to certain whether money shown in the accounts has having been disbursed was legally available for applicable to the service of the purpose to which it has been drawn, and basically the expenditure which was occurred has to be confirms the authority that governs it. In addition to this legally and the regulatory audit, the CAG can also conduct the propriety audit, that is, he can look into the wisdom, faithfulness, and economy of the government expenditure and comment on the wastefulness and the extravagance of such expenditure. So basically, if the government has spent out the money from the public purse, then the CAG could submit the report that whether the amount was rationalized or not. However, unlike the legal and the regulatory audit, which is obligatory on the part of CAG, the property audit is discretionary. It means that it's not obligated on the CAG to perform it. Okay. The Secret Service expenditure is a limitation on auditing role of the CAG. It means that the CAG is not allowed to look after the expenditure which is generally done on the Secret Service or the intelligence. In this regard, the CAG cannot call for particulars of expenditure incurred by the executive agencies, but has to accept a certificate from the competent administrative authority that the expenditure has been occurred under his authority. It means that the intelligence authority will just give the certificate to the CAG that we have done this expenditure and that was the amount. The CAG is not allowed to audit the amount to look after whether the amount has been spent. The Constitution of India visualizes the CAG to be comptroller as well as the auditor general. It means that not only he audits the files but also controls the expenditure. However, in practice, the CAG is fulfilling the role of an auditor general only and not that of a comptroller. Okay. In other words, the CAG has no control over the issue of money from the Consolidated Fund of India, and many departments are authorized to draw money by issuing checks without specific authority from the CAG, who is concerned only at the audit stage when the expenditure has already taken place. It means that when the things will be done, the CAG could audit them, but he could not stop them before happening. In this respect, the CAG of India differs totally from the CAG of Britain, because he having the power of both comptroller as well as auditor general. Like Britain, in Britain, the executive can draw money from the public exchequer only by the approval of president. But in India, approval by the CAG. But in India, this is not available. Thereafter, the role of CAG in the auditing of public corporation is limited. Why? Broadly speaking, his relationship with the public corporation falls into the following three categories. Like some corporations are audited totally and directly by the CAG. For example, the Damodar Valley Corporations, Oil and Natural Gas Commission, Air India, India Airlines Corporations, and others. But some others are audited by the private professional auditors who are appointed by the central government after the consultation with CAG. If necessary, the CAG can conduct the supplementary audit to check out the verification. The examples are like the Central Warehousing Corporation, Industrial Finance Corporation, and others. All right. Some other corporations are totally subjected to the private audit. There is no role of the CAG. In other words, the audit is done exclusively by the private professional auditors and the CAG does not come into the practice or into the picture at all. They submit their annual reports and contacts directly to the Parliament, example of such corporations are the Life Insurance Corporation of India, Reserve Bank of India, State Bank of India, Food Corporation and others in which the CAC could not participate. The role of CAC in auditing of government companies is also limited. They are audited by the private auditors who are appointed by the government after the advice of the CAC. CAC can also undertake supplementary audit or test audit of such companies if required. In 1968, an audit board was established as a part of the office of CAC to associate the outside specialists and experts to handle the technical aspect of audit of specialized enterprises like the engineering, iron and steels, chemicals, and so on. Because the CAC could be professional at the finance matter, but there is chances that he is not professional when it's a matter of technical area. All right. The board was established after the recommendation of the Administrative Reform Commission of India. It consists of a chairman and two members who are appointed by the CAC. All right. Thereafter, what is Appleby's criticism? Paul H. Appleby, in his two reports on Indian administration, was very critical of the role of CAC and attacked the significance of his work. He also suggested that the CAC should be relieved of responsibility of audit. In other words, he recommended the abolition of the office of CAC. His points of criticism of the Indian audit are as follows. The first, the function of the CAC in India is in a large measure an inheritance from the colonial rule because the Britishers were practicing it, so that we had adopted. The CAC is today a primary cause of widespread and paralyzing unwillingness to decide and to act because the auditing has a repressive and the negative influence. If the government spend, then the government is responsible for answering. So that's why the government generally avoids to expand more and more on the economy. The parliament has a greatly exaggerated notion of the importance of auditing to the parliamentary responsibilities and so has failed to define the functions of CAG as the constitution contemplated it would do. The CAG function is not really a very important one because auditors do not know and cannot be expected to know very much about the good administration. Their prestige is highest with others who do not know how much about administration. The auditors know what is auditing, which is not administration. It is a necessary but a highly pedestrian function with a narrow perspective and a very limited usefulness. A deputy secretary in the department knows more about the problems in his department than the CAG and his entire staff because they are judging the things from the point of view of finance. So, what are the articles related to the Comptroller and the Auditor General of India at a glance? Let's see. First is Article 148, which provides for the Office of Comptroller and the Auditor General of India. Second is Article 149, which defines the duties and powers of the Comptroller and Auditor General of India. 150, forms of accounts of the Union and of the states. 151, about the audit reports. All right. So students, basically in this lecture, we had finished the Comptroller and the Auditor General of India, which is an important topic from the examination point of view. In the next lecture, we will start with another important topic. Till then, just revise all the facts and figures which we have discussed in this lecture and be ready for the another lecture. With this note, we are going to end this lecture and thank you.